Hello, everyone. I want to talk about a surprising topic today, or at least it's somewhat surprising to me, which is our clothes. It's surprising to me because I've never been someone who's super into clothes. Like I don't just slough them off and not care anything about clothes, but I don't really care a ton about them either. And I've definitely never been someone who's been like a fashionista or on trend. No, that's definitely never been who I am. And yet today, I want to talk about our clothes because multiple times in the last just few weeks, conversations have come up with me with different women in my life, in my work, across a whole really wide spectrum about wearing clothes that you want to wear, and in particularly wearing bright clothes. So here are some of the different conversations to give you a little bit of context. One woman told me that she does wear bright clothes and floral colors at work, and she often gets comments from other women about how much they love that, but they feel like they can't. They feel like they can't wear those bright clothes or those patterns. So that was one conversation. Another woman I talked to is working on wearing more bright clothes in her personal life. Like she does at work, and she works with kids. So it maybe makes sense there. Like it feels like, oh, I can wear bright clothes when I'm with kids. But in my personal life, that feels a little bit more much or daring. And then I started thinking about different conversations I've had in the past with women. In particular, one woman showed up for me in my mind because she told me very specifically that she frequently or really only wore darker clothes, so the blacks and the grays, because she felt like if she wore the bright clothes that she really wanted to wear, that she would be too much for people. And for me, I've never had a problem with color. But all these conversations started to make me think about my own journey with clothes and how all of these conversations are about way more than just the clothes we wear on the outside of our bodies. So for me, like I said, I've always liked color. I've never been like, when I was a kid, I really loved like truly bright colors. I would say now I'm more like a deep color type person. Like if you're watching this on YouTube, I like the pink that I'm wearing right now, or purples and teals and blues. Like those are my colors. And I definitely wear black and gray and navy blue too. Like I don't totally ignore those colors, but these are my colors: the teals, the blues, the turquoises, the purples, the pinks. Those are my colors. And I've always worn them. I've never felt like I couldn't or shouldn't wear them. But I have totally changed other parts of the way that I have dressed at different points of my life and my career. So when I started my corporate career, I was kind of a hippie when I was in my 20s, and now I'm a little bit more balanced, like kind of a hippie, kind of not a hippie, a little bit of a little bit of everything. Really, love being out in my bare feet and playing my guitar of mostly Brandi Carlile and Joni Mitchell songs. So, it still flows through me pretty strongly. But I used to dress like when I started my corporate career, which was my late 20s, I dressed in more of that kind of hippie style. Like I remember this brown linen skirt that I had with a light turquoise short sleeve sweater that I loved when I was like 27, 28 years old. And I'd wear it with, flat sandals and Birkenstock type sandals, things like that. So definitely a little bit more on the earthy side, right? And no one ever gave me feedback on these clothes. Like no one ever told me that I wasn't professional enough or that I should be dressing in a different way. But what was also true is that over the course of really just like a year into my corporate job, despite not having been given any feedback or direction on how I should be dressing, those more hippie type clothes slowly exited my wardrobe, and in came suits and low heels and more fitted clothing. And at the time, I told myself that I liked these clothes. And I don't think there's anything wrong with these clothes, but in reality, they weren't me. They weren't me at all. I started wearing them because that was the costume of the people around me. The hippie clothes were not what I was seeing on other people. So instead, I shifted the way that I felt more like myself, the way that I was dressing in order to fit in and belong. And what's so interesting is after being in that corporate job for a couple of years, like at a headquarters location, pretty casual overall, to be honest, like corporate culture, but still, more traditional. That's probably the best way to say it. Then I moved into a plant environment, so a manufacturing environment where I got to wear casual clothes. So I wore tennis shoes to work. I wore jeans. Usually my tops were a little bit nicer, but like definitely on the casual side. And I loved it. Like this was definitely more me. But those suits and those low heels and those more fitted like blouses with buttons and collars, they stayed in my closet. And they came out on the days and for the events where I felt like I had to be professional. Like they came out as a costume to make myself be professional. And over time, I tried to kind of, put in my own flair with these suits and these colors. Like, so I had a teal blazer, I had a burgundy colored blazer. But in reality, like this was just an internal compromise, which really never works. Like I was trying to both be myself and look like everyone else at the exact same time. And this doesn't really work. This was an internal compromise that was really no compromise at all. And let me tell you, this wasn't just about corporate America, because I carried the same thing with me into my speaking career, into my business. If you go back and watch my first speaking reel, my only speaking reel, it's now 3.5 years old and I badly need a new one. That is on the goal list by the end of the year, get a new speaking reel. So if you go to my website, I'll link to this in the show notes. If you go to my website and look at that speaker reel, you're going to see a couple of different outfits that I'm wearing. So one is one that I love. It's still a dress that I have. It's this bright blue dress. It's kind of feminine. It's a little bit flowy. It has a black belt and a little bit of black patterning in it. And I love the color. Like this is probably my favorite colors, this kind of bright blue. I wore it at a General Mills event for women in marketing a couple of years ago. And you'll see that one in there and you'll be like, oh yeah, I see what she's talking about. Like that's it. That looks like her. But then for the bulk of this video, like the day when I knew I had a videographer there who's going to be videoing me and interviewing me for like the bulk of what this speaking reel was going to be, so like the bulk of the footage, I wore a tight black dress with that teal blazer buttoned up. Now I love that color. The teal color is like my favorite, but this wasn't exactly me. This was the costume of what I felt like a speaker should look like, what I felt like someone who is professional should look like. It was all of the shoulds showing up right then, right there, literally for all of you to see, even though I was also at the same time speaking about topics like creating your own rules for success and being authentic. Like I still felt this, that like I needed to put on the costume of what was professional. And that's why all of this is about way more than just your clothes. And whether it's the bright clothes, whether it's this fear of wearing bright clothes or this fear of just dressing how you actually want to, it's about something way deeper. It goes right to the heart of all of this. It goes right to the heart of who are you allowed to be and how are you allowed to show up? Because when you start dressing in a costume that's not really you, when you start muting your colors, whether that's in a very literal way, like you're not wearing the bright colors you want to, or you're not dressing in the style of clothes that you want to, like what was true for me, you're most often shrinking yourself. You're not just muting your colors, you are muting you. And I can see this in a very literal way as I look back on my corporate career. Like as I started to dim how I dressed on the outside and felt like I needed to fit in with others and dress how other people were dressing or dress like how a professional was supposed to dress, I also started to hold back my voice. I wasn't ever quiet. Like no one would ever say I was quiet. And I definitely wouldn't say I was quiet either, but I started to contain it. I started to hold it back like 20 or 30%, and not just in a way of emotional intelligence and, thinking about including others and kind of the positive sides of that. This was more like self-censorship, 20 or 30%, maybe even more sometimes, of containing and self-censorship. I was containing myself on the outside. I was containing myself on the inside. I was containing my voice. I was containing all of it, just holding it all back, like 20 or 30 or sometimes a little bit more percentages than what I really am. And that's a question I want to pose to you today. If you are muting the clothes that you wear, where else are you muting yourself? Because I think it's likely that you're in the same boat that I was, that it's not just about the clothes. It is not just about the clothes. Like if you're muting yourself on the inside or the outside in the way that you look, the way that you're portraying yourself to others, I think it is highly likely you are muting yourself in other ways. Maybe that's with your voice. Maybe that's with your energy. I did that for a long time, still do sometimes. I'm still working at like letting all of my energy out into the world and letting the fullness of me out there. So if you're muting your colors, if you're muting your style, if you're muting what you show to people on the outside, how are you muting yourselves in other ways? How are you muting yourself in other ways? Where are those clothes a costume of how you are supposed to be, how you're supposed to show up? And where are you also wearing a costume in your life? This is so much more than just about the clothes. So that's the first question I want to ask you. I have like 3 or 4 questions for you today. That's what we're doing today. All questions. That's that first question. If you're muting the way you are dressing, where else are you muting yourself in your life? Where else are you holding back, containing, shrinking? Where else are you doing that? And then the second question is, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of in showing up as all of you? And 2 immediate things came to mind when I reflected on this question, and they really go together. So one is a fear of being seen as who you really are. And I think this is particularly true for the bright colors, because this is like a literal thing. I mean, if you're wearing bright colors and prints, you are more likely to be seen in a very literal way. Like it's harder to shrink back into the corner when you are more visible. And that can be scary. That can be really scary. And this also become from like an energetic standpoint and a vulnerability standpoint of showing and sharing your full self. This has been way more true for me because, like I said, the bright colors and being seen in kind of a physical, literal way never really bothered me. I was always okay with that. But did I let the fullness of myself be seen all the time? No, not even close. Because those rules telling me that I was too much, that I needed to contain myself, that I needed to slow down, I needed to shrink just a little bit, not like all the way, but just a little bit, just rein myself in just a touch, that 20 or 30%, to make myself more palatable, to make myself fit in, to make myself belong. Because we all want to belong. And yet we know we can't truly belong if we're wearing a costume, a literal or a figurative one. So this fear of being seen, like it can be uncomfortable to show up in bright clothes, to show up in a way where you are seen literally, energetically, your voice is heard, all of those things, like it's vulnerable. I still remember the first time that I ever wore red lipstick. It was to a wedding, had nothing to do with work, but I wore red lipstick to a wedding because I was wearing this lace blue dress, and it was a winter wedding. And I just thought, like, I looked at myself and I was like, yeah, red lipstick is going to go really well with this dress. Like, this is what I need to wear. And I'm not kidding. I felt like when I put on that red lipstick, the only thing that people were going to see was red lipstick, that like somehow all eyes were just going to be zeroed in on my lips. And that was the only thing people could see. And I felt like it was just like this beacon of red light coming out from my lips. And that was the only thing you could see. And that was the only thing I was aware of. But what was really funny is once I got the pictures, I wore it anyway, reapplied it multiple times during the night. When I got the pictures back, I was like, oh no, this just looks like it fits. Like, it looks like me. It looks like it goes well with everything else that I'm wearing. It's just red lipstick. It honestly just looks good. And since then, red lipstick has become very fun for me. I'm not wearing it today. I'm wearing a different color today, but I do love red lipstick. I do love it. There's a freedom in wearing red lipstick and knowing that it's a little bold and that I'm being seen when I wear it. But I didn't feel that way when I started. There was a discomfort in being seen rather than a freedom in being seen. So that's one of the things I think that can get in the way, that you can be a fear underlying, like, what are you afraid of? And really putting yourself out there, wearing the bright clothes, showing yourself. And the other one, which goes right along with this fear of being seen, in fact, it's probably the one that's really true for both of them, which is, what will people think? What will people think if you wear the bright clothes, you wear the bold jewelry, you dress in the hippie clothes, you like whatever it is, you speak your mind, you take your own career path. I mean, anything. It's the what would people think? That maybe you're being too much by dressing the way you want to dress. Maybe you're not being professional enough. Maybe you're being too flashy. Maybe you're not dressing the way that a mom is supposed to dress, or the way someone in their 20s or 30s or 40s or 50s is supposed to dress. You need to rein that in because of what other people will think and their judgment, which might be true. There might be judgment. And yet, can we let that judgment hold us back from being ourselves for our entire lives? And I've talked to so many women about this, and other women who are like in this kind of hippie camp that I was in, that I still am in to a degree, of like stopping, like putting those clothes on the shelf and putting them in kind of a past lifetime, putting that whole life away because they're afraid that, if they show up at their kids' school or at work, and their kids' school in the suburbs or their work downtown, dressed in the slightly more hippie clothes, that they're not going to be seen as a professional, or they're going to be seen as too out there, or they're just going to get weird looks if they wear what they really want to wear. So these are some of those fears. And I want you to ask that question of yourself. What are you really afraid of? What is causing you to hold back from wearing the bright colors, from showing yourself, your full self, at work and in the rest of your life? And then a final question for you, this is the more fun question, which is, when do you really feel free? Like, what are you wearing when you feel free, when you feel the most like yourself? So I told you earlier that earlier in my career, my life, and my speaking business, I had some suits, I wore blazers, all the things that were kind of the supposed to. It wasn't every day, but it was definitely a regular part of my wardrobe, especially on those days when I had something like big, like, oh, I need to interview, I need to be in front of a room, I need to be leading a training. I mean, whatever it was, like the days where I was quote unquote to be professional, meant I dressed less and less like myself. So when I moved from Minnesota to Colorado, I took a look at my wardrobe, because I moved here like just with my Honda Civic. So there was some serious, there was no storage going on. Well, that's not true. I stored some things in my parents' basement, but when I moved here, I didn't have a moving van. I didn't have a pod. I didn't have any of that stuff. I just had my Honda Civic, which you probably know is also not a huge car, although I think it is miraculous what I was able to fit in that car to get to Colorado. Even had a little roof rack and everything. But anyway, I digress. The move here and the small amount of stuff I was bringing with me made me get very discerning about what I was going to bring and what I was going to keep in my life. And I looked at all my clothes. I looked at the one suit I had and the 4 or 5 blazers that I had, and I thought, I never want to wear these again. I never want to wear them again. And I put them in the bag to go to the Goodwill, and to the Goodwill they went. And it was so freeing to let go of those clothes. So freeing that like now when I do a speaking topic on creating your own rules for success, at the very end, I talk about what changes I've made in my life about creating, like living into my own rules for success. And some of them are more serious about talking about like racism more directly and discrimination, or saying no to more things so that I can focus on the things that are truly important in life and the impact that I want to create. And then I also have a bullet point that says I threw away my suits. That's how freeing it was to look at these clothes and say, I tried. I tried, and these clothes were not me. They were never me. I tried to compromise by putting some color in there, but they were never me. And I now get to pass them along, and they don't have to be in my life anymore. Because I realize that I can be professional and myself at the same time. So last fall, I was on the biggest stage that I'd ever been on for a speaking engagement. I was talking on discovering your authentic voice and how to use it to create change. I'll link to my speaking topics in the show notes as well, in case you want to learn more about those and bringing me to your event, your organization. But for this event, I knew I was going to wear blue. Blue seems to kind of be my color when I'm on an actual physical stage. When I'm on video, we get some different colors going on, but I think I have 4 blue dresses, and I don't have that many. I think I only have 5 or 6 things I ever wear on stage, and 4 of them are blue. So I brought 2 blue dresses with me. One was a little bit more on the traditional side, and then one was a looser dress, but I could wear a belt. Very important, because you got to have a place to put your mic when you're on stage. But it had these like feathery things around the neck and around the sleeves. And I woke up on the day of that speaking engagement, and I was like, that's what I need to wear. I need to wear the dress that is the brighter blue with the feathery, kind of feminine, kind of funky, soft things around the neck and around the sleeves. And I'm going to wear red lipstick. I'm going to wear red lipstick with the blue dress. And I felt empowered walking up on that stage. I took this deep breath out onto the biggest stage I'd ever been on by a long shot. And I felt like me. And there is something so powerful about finding what you wear on the outside that allows you to feel just as you are on the inside, so that you can bring that forward, so that you can use your voice, bring your energy forward in this grounded and wild way, where you're letting go of the rules about how you are supposed to be and being yourself. There's so much power in that. And I felt that day. I felt that day. So I ask you that question, like, when do you feel most free? I also want to point out a really interesting thing. I'd be curious to know, and you can email me later if this is true for you. Do Halloween costumes come up on that list for anyone? Because I look around at people on Halloween, and I love Halloween. So let me point this out. There's no judgment in this, because I love Halloween. I love putting on a costume. I think it's so much fun. And part of the reason that it's fun is because it is freeing. And I look around at people on Halloween, particularly women, and I think, you're more free in that costume than you are wearing your clothes that you wear every single day. You feel more like yourself in an actual costume than you do in your regular clothes. And I felt that too. Like there was a freedom in putting on this costume and getting to be quote unquote someone else that was actually more me. I remember wearing this kind of witchy dress that was kind of witchy, but also kind of like Stevie Nicks-ish. I went more in the like vampire witch direction with white face makeup, but there was something very Stevie Nicks about this dress as well. And when I put on that dress, I was like 23, I think, 22, 23. I went to this big Halloween party and like I was in it. You look at pictures of me from that night and like I was embodying that dress in a way that I did not know how to embody in my day-to-day life. I got to embody a strength, a sexuality, a power. I got to embody that and be that and let that out, even though that was in me all the time. But putting on that costume allowed me to be a different person that was actually more of me. I got to let more of myself out. What does that for you in your day-to-day life? Or do you feel like you also have to dress in a costume in order to let like an actual literal costume to let your full self out? And if that's the case, how can you feel more of that day-to-day? Like what makes you feel powerful and free and whatever it is you want to feel like? I also love wearing super feminine summer dresses. I wear them almost every day the entire summer because they're soft and they're kind of more in that hippie realm. And like, I feel free and light in these clothes. So there's lots of different things. There's no right or wrong about what makes you feel that way. And if it is a suit, go for it and wear the suit. This is not a judgment to say that you can never wear a suit again or a collared shirt or buttons or form-fitting tailored clothes from Ann Taylor. I don't know. You can wear whatever you want to wear if it makes you feel free. That's the only question that I'm asking you is, what makes you feel free? What are you wearing on the outside that is a representation of who you are on the inside? And think about like, where is that gap? Where is that gap between how you are presenting yourself on the outside and how you are, who you are on the inside? And what are the fears, rules, and expectations between you and your freedom? What are the rules, fears, and expectations that are filling up that gap? And do you want to close it? Because you get to choose. You get to choose. And we're not going to go into all the discomfort. I know the discomfort is there. That red lipstick was uncomfortable the first time I was there, first time I wore it. And it became freeing so quickly to show up in my boldness. So you can wear that bright shirt that you love, wear that red dress, wear that red lipstick for you, wear the long flowy skirt, whatever it is for you, and experiment. Experiment and see what feels most like you. See what feels like freedom. See what allows your fullness on the inside to come out on the outside. Feel that freedom of stepping into your fullness, along with the discomfort, but lean into that freedom. Lean into that freedom. This is just another version of grounded wildness coming to the surface, where you're so grounded in who you are that you get to be wild in your freedom. Wild and tethered into your own core. Letting go of the rules saying that you're too much, you're not allowed to wear the bright clothes, you need to conform, and instead being you. You are allowed to be the bright and bold. You are allowed to wear the bright and bold. You are allowed to be all of who you are in your clothes and everything else about you. Bye.